Good morning, everybody. It's Eric from EP Autos, your favorite libertarian car journalist, and I'm driving along here in this Mercedes Sprinter van that they dropped off to replace the Golf TDI that I reviewed last week. And boy, this thing's a hoss. They sell it in two wheelbases, 144-inch and 170-inch. It's big, it's wide, it's tall. I'm going to pan around the camera here. Bear with me a minute so you can see some of it. And you can look at the back of it, and look at the roof. They offer it in two roof heights and tall enough so that somebody my height, 6'3", can actually stand and walk in the thing without ducking. People use these things as RV conversions because it's already a step above your standard van. It's got a fairly nice dashboard as it sits, even though this particular one they sent me is stripped. But people will buy one of these things and then outfit it to be a kind of luxury van, RV. I see them on the parkway all the time. It's got this huge glass area in the front, and it's got these huge side windows, and you're really high off the ground, and you're very close to the road. It's almost a cab forward, so you've got this kind of 3D theater experience as you drive down the road. But that's not primarily what I wanted to talk to you about today. I'm going to give you a little preview of this thing before I write my review. The thing I wanted to discuss in today's vidcast is the disappearing Cadillac V8. Those of you who have checked Cadillac's website might notice or might have discovered that the CTS V is being dropped quietly from the lineup for 2015. And what that means is that 2 months from now, when the calendar year turns from 2014 to 2015, Cadillac, which made its bones selling big cars with big V8s, is no longer going to sell a V8 engine. And boy, that's painful, isn't it? Every single Cadillac passenger car, I should say, I have to qualify that, will come with either a four-cylinder or a V6 engine, largest being the 3.6-liter V6 that's also found in other GM products such as the Chevy Camaro and various other models. But the 6.2 V8 that was shared with the Corvette that was used in the CTS V is going bye-bye. If you want a V8 Cadillac 2 months from now, a new one, really the only thing you've got open to you is the Escalade and the Escalade ESV. Those are the last of the line. And it saddens me because once upon a time a journalist asked a Cadillac executive about power and power and weight, and the Cadillac executive responded, "If Cadillac requires more power, we'll simply build a bigger V8." When I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s, people were in awe of big Cadillacs with the biggest V8s that General Motors produced, 8 liters, 500 cubic inches, makes even the 455 cubic inch V8, that's 7.4 liters, in my 76 Pontiac Trans Am seem almost kind of small in comparison. I'm going to pass a Clover here. Clover! Just passed a Clover in the Sprinter van. Anyway, back to where we were. So what's the reason for this? Why is Cadillac going away from V8s? Well, they're going away from V8s for the same reason that BMW and Mercedes have been going away from 6-cylinder engines in their mass market vehicles and going down to little 4-cylinder engines that are turbocharged or diesel engines. And it's because we've reached a tipping point with the government's corporate average fuel economy mandates, which are imposing ever higher costs on manufacturers that build vehicles that don't meet the bar, and the bar is going to go up to 35.5 miles per gallon on average. That's not highway, on average, come 2016. So really that's only one model year from now, and a lot of the 2016 models are going to start coming out within 6 months. It used to be practice for BMW and some of the other manufacturers to simply fold the compliance costs of CAFE, should back up, the gas guzzler fines that the federal government imposes on them, into the price of the car, and the market bore that. People in that bracket, people who bought BMWs and Mercedes and Cadillacs, could afford to spend a bit more on their cars, and they wanted the bigger engines, and so everything was fine. But we're kind of reaching a tipping point now where the costs associated with offering 6-cylinder, let alone V8 powered cars, in an environment where the government requires an average of 35.5 miles per gallon is just becoming impossible. And the other shoe that's going to drop not too far down the road is this proposed 50.4, I think it's 50.4, I've got to go back and check, but it's more than 50 miles per gallon on average that is slated to go into effect in 2020. Now that's 5 years from now, but people outside the car industry might not appreciate that for what they call product planning purposes, that is new model cycles. The lead time on that is typically about 4 years. So right now, as we're almost in 2015, most of the car companies are already working on their 2020 model cars, or at least they're thinking a lot about them and what they're going to need to do to sell those cars without getting hit with massive penalties. So to get back to Cadillac and the CTS V, its EPA numbers are, I think, 14 city and 19 highway. So that's politically impossible even with a 35.5 mile per gallon CAFE standard, but if you push it up to 50, it's completely impossible. So probably this is why Cadillac, along with a lot of the other manufacturers, have been discreetly dropping these bigger engines. Now, the interesting thing to me about this is the government claims it's necessary to impose these mandates in order that the public be provided with more fuel-efficient cars. But I think that's a big bunch of horse hockey, as my favorite character from the TV show MASH, Colonel Potter, used to say. And here's why. I remember when I was a kid in the 70s, you could, if you wanted, go out and buy yourself a Fleetwood Brewham to Elegance, let's say, that had the 500 cubic inch V8, and that got probably 12 miles per gallon. But if you didn't want that, there were any number of other cars available that got much better gas mileage that were much smaller, Volkswagen Beetles, Datsun B210s, what have you. There were lots and lots of cars out on the market before any government mandates having to do with fuel efficiency came out. Now, the question that's begged by CAFE with regard to cars like the current CTS-V is that if they're unpalatable, if people want higher mileage cars, well, then it wouldn't be necessary to impose these mandates, because people would simply not buy them. Instead, they would buy cars that were more fuel efficient. The market, in other words, would self-correct. It doesn't need the nudge, as one of my least favorite statists, a guy named Cass Sunstein, likes to put it, to push people into these cars. As long as there is freedom of choice, manufacturers are going to offer a cornucopia of choices, and people can select for themselves the appropriate balance between fuel economy, let's say, and size and capability and performance. There's no reason, in my opinion, why, or there's no legitimate right, I should say, for one person to dictate to other people what sort of car they ought to have. If I'm a person who values a high-performance car and I'm able to pay for it, well, I should be able to buy it, and I should be able to, concern myself with however much gas I use, as long as I'm paying for it and I'm not forcing anybody else to pay for my fuel bills. And conversely, if I'm somebody who values a very economical car, well, I should be able to go out and buy one. And I'd like to add at this point the irony that the government, which ostensibly is so concerned about fuel economy uber alles, has also imposed other mandates having to do with crashworthiness and safety that have added significantly across the board to the curb weight of every new vehicle that's sold, to such an extent that even the smallest vehicles that you can buy right now, little cars like the Fiat 500, let's say, that's a micro car, or even the smart car, the little smart car, those cars are well over 2,000 pounds, which is ludicrous in historical context. If you went back to when I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s, small economy cars were well under 2,000 pounds, and the lightest of them, cars like the old Volkswagen Beetle, weighed around 1,600 pounds. So the reason that today's economy cars are not particularly economical is because they're so doggone heavy. It's really hard to make a car that weighs 2,500 pounds get 50 miles per gallon. And I bring up 50 miles per gallon because, believe it or not, those of you who are too young to remember, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, there were a number of cars back then when Jimmy Carter was president and Ronald Reagan was president that got well into the 40 mile per gallon range, and a couple of them got over 50. I did a review a couple of days ago, it's up at epautos.com, on the 2015 Volkswagen Golf TDI with the diesel engine. And despite all of the advancements of all the modern technology that car has, it peaks at 45 on the highway, 45 on the highway. Meanwhile, back in 1979, you could get a Rabbit diesel. The Rabbit was the predecessor to the Golf, that could hit 60 miles per gallon. Incredible. And that car did not have an overdrive transmission, and it did not have all of the technological advances of the ensuing nearly 40 years since it was produced. And the reason has to do, again, with weight. Weight. Cars are too heavy, and they're too heavy because the government dictates that they be safe. And these are all well and good things, but they force compromises. And the aggravating thing is you're not given the choice. The government, that is these people who are in these bureaucracies who've never been given a mandate to do these things by anybody, are just making choices for you and for me, and we get to pay for them. Anyway, that concludes today's Vidcast rant. I have a new Clover video up at EP Autos that shows the won't pull forward Clover, and there'll also be an article coming up shortly about the worth of those vehicle history reports, the Carfax reports and so on that you probably heard a lot about. So hope you find some of that entertaining, informative, and please post your comments, positive or negative. And that's all I've got for now, and we'll see you next time.